Steve Colon with Colon and Villaplana here. I'm here with my good friend Bryant Mero. Bryant Mero is a Keller Williams sales agent. He's also a real estate sales agent, that is. He is also a productivity coach, so he's involved in training other agents and helping them help clients like yourselves. Bryant, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Bryant Mero. I'm with Keller Williams Realty Group. I am a licensed real estate agent for the past 17 years. I'm also a productivity coach, and like Steven said, I do assist other realtors in helping them, obviously gain in production and get them to the level that they want to be at.
Right, so I thought today would be a good time to talk about why would a seller need a real estate agent, and why would a buyer need a real estate agent? So, Brian,
Sure.
Why would a seller want to hire or should hire a real estate agent?
Well, a seller should always hire an agent only because we are here to represent the needs of a seller. So, what a seller would want from a listing agent like myself or any other realtor is obviously representation. We have a fiduciary duty to our client, the seller, to sell the home for the best price possible as long as the market allows for it. But aside from that, we also want to know the needs and wants of our client, the seller. We want to know why they're selling. And then once we know why they're selling, where do you want to go afterwards? So it's not just I'm here just to sell you home and I'm here to cash out. No, we're here to figure out your next moves, get you from point A to point B. Obviously there's other processes to that, but that is, for me, the most important part of being a listing agent.
Right, so that's good. So you definitely want to, as an agent, protect what their next move is. For instance,
Sure. If
they need time to, let's say they're buying a new construction in Florida, but they want to sell now, and maybe they need that to sell in order to buy. Mm-hmm. That's stuff that's going to be important for you to, point out in your memo to a sales attorney to make sure that your client's protected.
Yes. So, if for example, if an owner that I'm representing is selling a home that hypothetically is moving to Florida, but the home won't be ready for a certain amount of time. My job as their representative is, once we put the house in the market, is to, acknowledge the fact to not only the buyers, but also buyers that may be represented by agents that, hey, you may be getting into contract with this property that I'm helping the seller sell, but we may need a little bit more time. So it's important that we communication is essential in this aspect. So it's important that we let everybody know that whatever the seller's needs are. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, manage expectations, exactly.
Good. So when we were speaking before, you were talking
Sure.
to me about that we're in a seller's market now, and most sellers, I would think, well, if I'm in a seller's market, that means that there's limited supply out there, and I could probably do this job myself. What would you tell someone that's attempting to do it themselves?
I would tell seller, you definitely can. Go ahead and attempt it, and I wish you much success. The truth is that whether you place your property in the market, even if you did your homework, you priced it right, are you equipped enough to understand the process that's entailed to it? So let's say someone does come in and place an offer to a seller who's selling the house for sale by owner, right? So I'm the owner, I want to sell it, I don't need a realtor, which is fine. I want to sell it, and you get what you want for it, whether it's above market or below market. You have no idea because you're really not a realtor, but you get what you want for it. Is that buyer truly qualified? And if they aren't, what do you do? How are you protected? Do you even have the idea, or do you have the knowledge of the process and what it takes to get there? Because the problem is, if a seller ends up selling a home to an unqualified buyer and they are in contract, they're going to waste time, energy, and effort that they may not have in order for the deal just to fall apart on them. It's been my experience that a seller, typically owners of properties, are working. So they have their own jobs. They probably have big families or whatever the case is. But to be a realtor, it's a full-time job. To sell your house on your own is going to be it's like taking on another job, essentially. So you're going to have to not only do what you have to do in order to, keep afloat and doing whatever you're doing, but you also now have to be a realtor as well. That obviously you may not have any experience in.
Right. So obviously, if they're selling their home, they're having their own open houses.
Sure.
They're there for every I would say, help me the word I'm looking for, like a preview of the home.
Well, they have to be present. They have to be the realtor. So they're putting on realtor shoes, and so they have to conduct open houses. They have to speak with other realtors. So now you're a seller, you're not a realtor, and you have an open house, and a buyer does come in with a realtor, a representative, a buyer's agent, right? Which every buyer should have one. That buyer's agent is going to come in there. Their job is to represent the buyer, to get the home for the lowest price possible. And so now you're going to have to negotiate with most likely an experienced agent who knows how to negotiate. You as a seller, you're kind of at a disadvantage in that aspect. You may consider yourself a great negotiator, but do you understand the market and do you understand how this process works? That's vital for a seller to know.
Right, and if you go on my website, you'd see things that we talk about, like sellers concessions and different type of loans.
Sure.
And there's things that a seller is not going to know or have the ability to know with that, and they may accept the wrong offer, like you said.
Right.
So, I mean, we've worked together a long time. Brian is actually one of the first agents that ever utilized my services. So
the first agent, my friend.
Yes, the first agent.
The first.
So we go way back, and I've done a lot of deals with Brian. I've seen him work with sellers and buyers alike, and go that extra mile for his clients.
Or two or three.
Exactly. And there's some things that come up, like when we have we have a deal right now where our seller is selling and they're also buying, and each deal is tied to each other. And something popped up that we didn't expect, which was a grant that the seller didn't know about. And fortunately, the only reason why the deal's still alive is because Brian has been able to flow into both worlds and negotiate between the other agents in that aspect. So, tell us some of the things you do like that for a seller.
That's great. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring it up if you didn't. So as a listing agent, I took on this listing. This owner wanted to sell her home. We had to sit down, and it took about 2 or 3 meetings with her, and she was shopping me around, with other realtors, and rightly so. I mean, any seller should shop around, and it's not just about what a realtor is going to charge. That's far from it. It's more how you feel about that realtor, the level of comfort that you have with that agent. So obviously, since I became her agent, we had that comfort, that level of comfort. But to get to the point is, she had me sell her home. I represent her, and obviously, we did a great job. I say we because you helped me with this. You're representing her on the sale and on the buy. We got her full asking, right? What we didn't know, and what she didn't know, even during our meetings, was that she did have this HPD grant. But we went into contract assuming that everything would go great, like every realtor and every attorney thinks that everything will be great. We hope it does, at least, right? But this comes up. So now the buyer is waiting for my client to get this HPD paperwork that we need. But in the interim, while we were selling her property, we are now buying something. And so I had to massage the deal with the buying side, because that seller wants her to purchase. And that seller, like any good seller should, has a great agent behind them as well. And so that agent is also asking me what's going on. That's why I go back and I always say, well, what are your next moves? So the truth is that I am working both sides, representing my seller, though. Always representing my seller. So now I have to make sure that the agent on the buy side of my seller, right, of that property that we're selling, understands, and we're communicating well, so she doesn't lose patience and pass on wrong information to her client, the buyer, who may then express something terrible to her attorney, which then comes back to you, and then we have some kind of conflict. At the same time, I have to also massage my client's purchase, her buy now, as to what's taking so long and why we need to wait. So it's a big juggling act, and it's not easy, and you have to have, I think, a good head on your shoulders. You have to have a lot of patience and a lot of wisdom and experience to kind of do this thing that we do. And I think that sellers sometimes really don't understand that. And I think it's our job as a listing agent to help them understand that process. It may not go to that extreme, but we do a lot of things in between that a seller may or may not know or see.
I know that for experience because you've always researched the property. You've came to me with issues that you've seen online. Hey, there's this issue. What does that mean? What is this issue? What does that mean? When this HPD situation came up, you were on me in my office right away. Fortunately, we had ordered the payoff of the grant that same day, but
Correct.
we're dealing with COVID, so it's taking a little bit longer. But now that you mentioned the listing aspect. Let's talk about, one other thing with the listing aspect.
Sure.
There's different loans and programs out there and whatnot. So
Yes, we were just talking about that.
right, yeah. So there's things that sellers aren't gonna know the downside of by accepting an offer. They may think an offer is better because of a down payment as opposed to the actual purchase price.
I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you, because that is actually super, super, super important. You, as an owner, may want to sell your home. That's great. And we had that. We just discussed that. But will the deal go through? Right. Will the deal go through? In actuality, you as a seller, can you get the information that you need to ensure that's going to happen? Once again, as a listing agent, my job is when the buyer or potential buyer or potential buyer's agent says, hey, I want to put an offer on this property that you represent. Look, I'm going to give you $10,000, $20,000 over market value or above asking, only because it's a hot seller's market. My clients are fighting and we've lost 2 houses. We want this house. Great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that great offer. But is it a real offer? Now, in the eyes of the agent and in the eyes of the potential buyer, it may be an offer that they feel strongly about. But the truth is, can the banker really complete that deal? Is the buyer qualified enough to make that kind of offer? Yes, we ask for pre-approvals as listing agents, and we say, yeah, you want to present an offer? Give me your pre-approval. Let me see it. Most listing agents, let me not say that. I apologize. Some listing agents may see the pre-approval and say, great, the deal, it's a solid buyer, a solid offer. I know the bank, it's good, like a Chase, for example, or any other bank. But the truth is, did that lender qualify the buyer enough? Does the lender have the 2 years of tax returns? Do they know their incomes? Do they know if there's any potential downfall that may happen? Do they qualify for this property truly and surely? And now, do they qualify for it now that you've placed an offer $20,000, $30,000 above asking? So as a listing agent, my job is to kind of take a step back before I go, wow, this is amazing. Look, seller, look at the great job that I did. No. Before I present that offer to my seller and get my seller's hopes and dreams up, let me speak to the buyer's agent and let me have a conversation with the lender so that we can kind of figure out, is this a viable offer? Is the pre-approval true and factual? And can we roll with this? Besides that, does the buyer need to sell something before they buy this? Are they locked in a lease on a rental that they won't be able to get out of? And now that's going to cause a problem as well. So there's a lot of factors that fall into play. And so, yes, it is vital that a seller, if not utilize a listing agent, at least have a conversation with a listing agent. Do your homework. Find a listing agent. Find 2 or 3. Interview them. You may not want to use them, but you might get some good advice. And you never know. You might end up gelling with them so well that you trust them enough. Because believe it or not, a seller may lose about 10% of what they could really gain if they had only hired a realtor.
I hear that all the time. So,
And I'm sorry, and they don't have to do all any other work. We do it all. So you pay us to make more money, and you do nothing. Sorry, I had to say that. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
So let's segue into why should a buyer ever get a real estate agent? Could they not just call the listing agent and do it themselves?
So now we're going on the flip side, right? Flip side is now buyer wants to buy. Maybe for most times it's first-time home buyers. I'm tired of renting. I don't want to do this anymore. My family's growing, or I just got engaged or married, or now I have 3 or 2 kids, whatever the case is. Or I just don't like my apartment, or I don't like my landlord, right? First and foremost, homeownership is one of the best ways to improve your life through homeownership, because you actually start owning stuff versus renting, right? Because renting, we just literally, we're paying someone to live in a place that they use that money to then buy the place that we're renting. So why can't we do the same as a buyer, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely a different way to look at it. When I was younger and I rented,
Right.
I rented in Queens. I think I was paying
What part of Queens?
Jackson Heights.
Okay.
It was 800 and something, but I recently ran into someone I knew that's actually still living in the building, and they're paying over 2,000 for the same apartment.
How many years? 10, 15 years?
At the time when I ran into him, it was about maybe 12, 13.
So let's just say 15. Imagine that. So if you average it out, let's just say $1,000 over 15 years. I mean, how much is that?
$1,000 over 15 years?
Yeah. So $1,000, 12 months, right? Over 15 years.
So that's 12. Okay, actually, I thought it was
quite a bit of money.
It's 12,000 per year, right?
Yeah.
Times 10 years is 120.
And then
So,
15,
okay.
imagine that. So guys, if you're renting out for over 10 years, right? I mean, look at how much you're giving the landlord. Not only is that landlord taking that, he may or may not fix your apartment. You may or may not get painted. God knows what happens at that apartment. They may say, hey, you know what, there's no hot water today, or the elevator is broken. You're paying $100,000 over the course of 10 or 12 years. For what? Where does it go? It doesn't go in your pocket. It's not your investment. Get a buyer's agent. If you're looking to buy, get a buyer's agent. Have that conversation. Say, hey, look, I'm tired of giving my money away. I want to own out. Now it's my time to find something where I can find a young Stephen Colon who's going to rent my apartment in Jackson Heights that I'm the owner of, and I want him to give me $100,000. Let's do that.
So you're saying a buyer's agent is going to be able to prevent, like, going back to my question,
Sure.
why would I not just go
Sorry,
to a listing
I
agent?
went somewhere else
No,
with that.
it's
Sorry.
it's actually the same question.
Sorry.
It's, why would I not call a listing agent? For what you just said, well, you may not be able to call every listing agent that's going to have the property that fits your needs.
Right.
Like we just said, you're searching for that property, as opposed to that buyer trying to search for a property and not have access to your tools.
Right. So the buyer says, okay, I'm going to go on Zillow, Trulia, whatever the case is. I'm going to go online. I'm going to look for a property. Oh my God, here's a property. Oh, here's the realtor. Right? Let me call the realtor. Let me just get direct access to the person that's selling the property. That's where buyers can initially go wrong. That buyer doesn't work. That agent that you call doesn't work for you. That agent works for the seller. Now, you're going to think, hey, I'm going to talk directly to the middleman here. I'm going to get this property. I'm going to speak directly to whoever's working with the seller. And the truth is, that agent's job is to help the seller make as much money as possible. Who's helping you if you're talking to the person that's helping the seller? So that's one of the major components of what we do. We're here to protect the buyer, because a buyer most likely is a first-time home buyer and has really no idea of the process. And it can be a really overwhelming process if you're not prepared for it. And I don't care how much homework you've done. I mean, I've purchased homes, and it's still a whirlwind for me as a realtor when I buy homes, because it can be an arduous process. It's tough. So I can only imagine what it's like for someone who's been renting for 10 years to now decide, hey, you know what? I want to buy a home. And they have no idea what they're getting into.
So I have a funny story. I was at a closing recently.
Okay.
And it's actually rare for this many people to be involved because of COVID, but this one was one of those where there was a lot of people there. And it was a listing agent.
Okay.
That the buyer made an offer to the listing agent.
Sure.
And at the table, everyone's talking about, the process. The buyer was like, I knew I loved the home. It was home I could be. I was hoping you took my first offer, but unfortunately, and then it came out that the agent got them to go 10,000 over and never presented the offer.
The first offer
to the seller. Basically knew from what that buyer told them what their range was and went for the most money right from the start.
So did the buyer feel slighted?
The buyer was very annoyed afterwards.
I would imagine.
They joked about it at the closing, but afterwards they were very annoyed.
Yeah,
but
of course.
that listing agent worked the seller. Their job is to get the highest price possible.
Yes. So the buyer potentially could have saved 10 20, who knows how many thousands of dollars. But because and you cannot fault that agent for doing that. They're doing their job.
Right.
They're doing their job. So buyers, buyers out there looking to purchase a home. Stephen's story is one of many that happens every day at all closing tables all around New York and all over the United States. Get an agent to represent you so that, when a buyer gives us an offer, our job is to immediately present it. So someone out there looking at this video may say, well, how do you know the offer is really being presented? And how do I know that you're really doing your job? Well, our job is to always communicate with the buyer, our client, right? But also, when we speak to a listing agent, we're not only speaking to them on the phone, but we're having email communication. So we're constantly relaying memos back and forth, presenting offers. Also, a buyer's agent has the ability to also ask the listing agent, did you relay my offer? Can you show me proof that my offer was rejected by the seller? Wow. A buyer's agent has the right to get that from the listing agent. So that if my buyer for some reason is unsatisfied with the level of service that I'm providing, at least I can back it up with proof. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I know you're not happy that you didn't get the offer, but let me show you that I presented this offer. Here is a declination letter from the seller themselves that signed a document saying, hey, your offer was rejected. So you know that the offer went directly to the buyer. That's vital, by the way.
And I know a lot of deals we've been on, you've been pivotal in representing a buyer.
I love it. I love representing buyers. Yes, I do. And I love representing sellers too, but...
Well, I was going to say, in both cases, on sellers and buyers, when it comes to repairs, right now we've only been dealing with price, but I have been on selling deals where the buyers came up with repairs and you were able to get the deal to go through without, repairs or many repairs, or it would have killed the deal.
Right.
And then I've been on the other side with the buyers where you either were able to negotiate a credit, make the buyer feel good, make the seller still feel good, make sure no one was losing.
Sure.
Yeah, and go forward, because what do we always say? This is such an emotional business for some reason.
Well, yes, this process is emotion, and the only reason those deals go through is because I'm the guy with the toolbox going in there fixing things.
Right, and you're removed. you're removed to some people without that emotion.
No, well, the truth is that was a joke, but the truth is yes. So, what a seller may deem as not a big fix, a buyer who hasn't owned a home for the first time may deem as, wow, this is something that needs to get repaired. It may be very emotional, like you said. It may not be a big thing. It could be something that's very small, but to a buyer, it's incredibly important, and to a seller, it's not. So, as a buyer's agent, my job is to understand, before we get into the stand, is help explain and educate my client, the buyer. Hey, this is only going to take about a couple $100s to repair. Versus, do you really want to go back and forth and negotiate something like this? Or, if it's really that important to you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, my client, let me speak to the seller and or their agent, and let me talk and explain to them why it may not be important to you, but to my buyer, it means everything. Since we're giving you what you want and we're giving you the terms and price that you've requested, can you do us that, can you do us that one thing or these three? Here's my list. And sometimes it's very easy, because when you're speaking to an experienced listing agent who understands the market as well and says, hey, I know Bryant, and he's not asking for a lot. The listing agent also knows repairs of this magnitude aren't that expensive. Let me smooth that out with my seller. We'll always come to an agreement. And that's the beauty of having representation on either side. Mm-hmm. It's that we eliminate you guys taking it personal, where we can just set that aside and say, hey, let's make this work. So, because if the buyer's isn't happy and the seller's isn't happy, then there's not this, right? And we want cohesion. We want this to happen, not this, right? We always want it, we want it to work.
Well, folks, I hope you learned something here today. And if you have any more questions, you're going to see Brian's contact information right after this, as well as my own. Feel free to reach out, and have a great day. Hope you're enjoying the videos that you've watched today. They're not meant to be a substitution for speaking with your legal professional, but just an educational tool. Thank you.